In 2010, an 80-year-old brand was actively dying. It was a joke. It wasn't a relic. It was the undisputed smell of your grandfather's medicine cabinet. Sales were plummeting. Market share was eroding. The brand was bleeding out on the sterile linoleum floors of grocery stores across the world. Then everything changed. In exactly 3 days, this geriatric brand engineered a digital campaign that completely broke the internet. They doubled their sales. They captured billions of organic impressions. They completely destroyed their biggest rival. And they did it all using one brilliant, counterintuitive strategy. They intentionally ignored the very people who actually used their product. This makes no sense. It violates every rule of traditional marketing. But it worked. And the psychological framework behind this massive pivot is something every modern business needs to understand. I will reveal the exact mechanics of this strategy later in this breakdown. But first, we have to look at the battlefield. We have to look at the deodorant wars of the 2000s. So how did a forgotten, nautical-themed body wash become the coolest brand on the planet overnight? How did a single commercial completely rewire consumer behavior? That is the question we are answering today. To understand the magnitude of this turnaround, you have to understand the crisis. This is the story of Old Spice. Founded in 1937, Old Spice was originally called Early American Old Spice. It was actually marketed to women first. But the men's product, packaged in its iconic buoy-shaped bottle, became a massive cultural staple. For decades, it was the default scent of American masculinity. It was reliable. It was ubiquitous. But ubiquity is dangerous. Ubiquity breeds complacency. By the year 2000, Old Spice was entirely stagnant. Procter & Gamble had acquired the brand a decade earlier, but they were struggling to modernize it. The brand had aged alongside its core demographic. If you were a teenager or a young professional in the 2000s, you did not buy Old Spice. You bought Axe. Unilever had launched Axe, known as Lynx in some markets, and it was a weapon of mass disruption. Axe did not sell hygiene. Axe sold a hyper-exaggerated, adolescent fantasy of the mating game. Their commercials featured average guys spraying themselves with body spray and suddenly being chased by hordes of supermodels. It was crude. It was loud. It was incredibly effective. Axe captured the youth market with ruthless efficiency. They dominated the shelf space. They dominated the cultural conversation among young men. Old Spice, by contrast, was paralyzed. They were caught in the worst possible position in the fast-moving consumer goods sector. They were stuck in the middle. They were not a luxury product. They were not a youth brand. They were just old. This is the dip. This is the moment of maximum friction. The brand managers at Procter & Gamble were facing an existential threat. If they did not capture the next generation of consumers, Old Spice would age out of existence. They needed a miracle. They needed a complete psychological rebrand. Enter Wieden and Kennedy. This was the legendary advertising agency famous for their work with Nike. Procter & Gamble handed them the keys to Old Spice with a simple, terrifying mandate. Save the brand. Wieden and Kennedy did not start by writing jokes. They started by mining data. They pored over focus group transcripts, sales figures, and demographic heat maps. They were looking for a vulnerability in Axe's armor. They were looking for a blind spot. And then they found it. It was a single, glaring statistic that Axe had completely ignored. 60% of men's body wash was not purchased by men. It was purchased by women. Mothers, girlfriends, wives. They were the ones actually walking down the personal care aisle. They were the ones making the purchasing decision and throwing the bottle into the shopping cart. Axe was spending millions of dollars aggressively targeting teenage boys. But the actual gatekeepers to the bathroom shower were women. This was the breakthrough. This was the hidden decision maker. The strategy suddenly shifted. The goal was no longer to convince a 20-year-old guy that Old Spice would make him irresistible. The goal was to convince his partner to stop buying him generic soap and start buying him a product that smelled like a fantasy. But there was a massive risk. If you market a men's product directly to women, you risk alienating the male user. Men do not want to use a product that feels emasculating. The messaging had to be absolutely flawless. It had to appeal to female aesthetics and desires, while simultaneously being so utterly absurd and hilarious that men would embrace it. It had to be a shared joke. This delicate balance gave birth to a specific persona. The man your man could smell like. They cast Isaiah Mustafa, a former NFL practice squad receiver, with an incredibly charismatic, deadpan delivery. The script they handed him was a masterpiece of rapid-fire copywriting and psychological triggers. Hello, ladies. Look at your mans. Now back to me. Now back at your mans. Now back to me. In the first 5 seconds, the commercial directly addresses the female buyer. It instantly acknowledges the reality of the purchasing dynamic. Sadly, he isn't me. But if he stopped using lady-scented body wash and switched to Old Spice, he could smell like he's me. The genius is in the delivery. Mustafa is hyper-confident, but the situations are entirely surreal. He moves seamlessly from a shower to a boat to riding a white horse. He holds an oyster containing tickets to that thing you love. The tickets turn into diamonds. It is a parody of romance novel tropes. It mocks the very concept of the perfect man, which makes it safe for actual men to laugh at. Axe took its mating fantasy seriously. Old Spice turned the fantasy into an absurdist comedy routine. But a great commercial is not enough. Execution is everything. The technical production of the commercial was a marvel. It was shot practically in a single, continuous take. The set pieces physically moved around Mustafa. When the environment dropped away to reveal him on a horse, he was actually sitting on a mechanical rig that shifted him onto the back of a real horse. This practical execution gave the video a strange, mesmerizing quality. You could not look away. They launched the commercial online first, days before its television debut during the Super Bowl weekend in 2010. This was a calculated digital strike. They knew people searched for Super Bowl commercials online. By seeding it early, they hijacked the algorithm. The video exploded. It went wildly viral before it even hit national television. But Wieden and Kennedy did not stop there. They knew that virality is a spike, not a baseline. To truly resurrect the brand, they needed to turn a viral moment into a cultural movement. They needed sustained engagement. 5 months later, in July of 2010, they launched the response campaign. This is the moment marketing history was made. For 2 straight days, they locked Isaiah Mustafa, a team of comedy writers, a director, and a digital analytics team in a studio in Portland. They scoured the internet for comments about Old Spice. They looked at Twitter, Reddit, and Facebook. They looked for comments from regular users, influencers, and major celebrities. When they found a target, the writers furiously drafted a personalized script. Mustafa stepped in front of the camera. The director called action. They shot a customized, hyper-specific video response, edited it on the fly, and uploaded it to YouTube within minutes. They did this 186 times in 48 hours. They responded to Ellen DeGeneres. They responded to Perez Hilton. They responded to a random guy asking for a marriage proposal video. They created a real-time, interactive feedback loop between a massive corporate brand and the individual consumer. The internet completely stopped. Nobody had ever seen a brand move this fast. This level of execution required absolute organizational synchronization. There was no time for legal reviews. There was no time for brand managers to deliberate for weeks. The creative team, the production crew, and the corporate executives had to be operating as a single, unified organism. When teams are siloed, brilliant ideas die. Delays kill momentum. Managing a fast-paced, highly reactive team of creatives requires perfect alignment. You cannot afford bottlenecks when cultural moments are happening in real time. That is the exact problem PulseMina HCM solves. When you're building an agile, high-performance organization, you need human capital management that moves as fast as your ideas. PulseMina HCM is the ultimate platform for aligning your workforce, streamlining your talent management, and ensuring that every department, from creative to corporate, is completely synchronized. Because when your internal teams are flawlessly connected, your external execution becomes unstoppable. The results of the Old Spice campaign were staggering. Within a month, the brand had generated over 1.4 billion organic impressions. The response videos became the fastest-growing online video campaign in history. But impressions do not pay the bills. Revenue does. By the end of the year, sales of Old Spice body wash had increased by over 100%. They completely dethroned Axe. Old Spice became the #1 selling brand of body wash for men in the United States. They didn't just survive the crisis. They redefined the entire category. And that is the secret. That is the core insight of this entire breakdown. The buyer is not always the user. Old Spice realized that their true customer wasn't the guy taking the shower. It was the woman pushing the grocery cart. By targeting the actual decision-maker with a message disguised as an inside joke for the user, they bypassed their competition entirely. They stopped trying to sell the functional benefits of soap. They started selling a shared cultural moment. They weaponized humor to destroy a 70-year-old stigma. This is the ultimate business principle. You must constantly audit your core assumptions. If you are losing the war, you might be fighting on the wrong battlefield. You might be talking to the wrong person entirely. Find the hidden decision maker. Map their psychology, and then build your strategy around them. If you learn something new, hit the like button and subscribe for more strategy breakdowns. And let us know in the comments, what company's strategy should we unlock next?